So I grew up in this little town, and they didn't have a lot of tourism, but for 1 year period, they had this cage outside of this big hunting store. And believe it or not, they had a live bear in that cage.
Oh my gosh.
Well, people started bringing like sodas and stuff, and they started letting the bears drink from their soda can. But one day, unbelievably sad, somebody slipped in a soda fuel, gasoline fuel. And this damn bear, before anybody knew it, started lapping up all of this gasoline.
Oh my gosh.
Well, about 2 minutes later, this bear started going crazy, and he moved the bars just enough. And the next thing we know, he pops out and he frickin' starts running into town, this bear galloping. And within about 2 minutes of his running, gets within about 100 feet of this big group of people standing out in front of the general store. And then all of a sudden, Tony, without any explicable notice, the bear just, boom, keeled over.
He ran out of gas.
You son of a gun. That was my punchline. Hello again, everyone. Stephen Todd here with ProMiles Software Development Corporation. Welcome to another episode of Trucking with ProMiles podcast featuring this cool cat, the owner, my boss, Tony Stroncheck. How are you, Tony?
Doing good, buddy Steve. How are you?
I'm doing great. We're going to talk about some serious topics today, such as fuel charges and cost plus and all of those good things and what they mean to the trucking industry and the drivers. Going to go to Washington, D.C. I hate to go there too often, even though I live close by, Tony. But some bills going through on energy, which affects, diesel fuel and those types of things. A truck parking bill actually making its way through Congress, maybe. We'll talk about that. Also, sadly, a little bit later in the podcast, we'll chat about a tragedy, another bridge hit fatality involving an oversized load. Very sad. And it involved a driver allegedly operating on an annual permit, which kind of brings up a whole other lot of topics that we'll chew on a little bit later. But before all of that, as we were coming on, what the hell were we talking about? We were talking about pickles, man boobs, and eating cakes with babies on Good Friday. What in the world were we talking about? I'm going to blame Steven. You.
That was not me. That was
the pickle story. I think we'll leave
the producer.
The pickle story, who is your daughter, by the way. The pickle story, I think we'll leave for another day because that could probably cause us to lose our PG rating. But the man boob thing, I'm a little self-conscious here. Megan likes us to look, sharp and appropriate. So I tuck in my shirt because way back when I used to be in broadcasting when I got out of college, and they taught you to tuck in your shirt and sit on your shirt to avoid those wrinkles. But when I do that now, my wife says my man boobs start getting exposed, and that's probably a little bit too much information for everybody. You're nice and thin. You don't have to worry about man boobs, do you?
Not yet. Now
it ain't pretty.
It's what's below the man boobs. It's this big round thing down there. I had a pin the other day and I couldn't find the damn pin. I looked everywhere. I stood up and it was right underneath my belly, right between your belly and where your belt goes and everything. That's where it was the whole time. And I knew I had that pin somewhere, and it was right there. And that's because I couldn't see it when I looked down anymore like I used to.
When we start doing polls, we're going to do polls eventually in the podcast when I figure out that technology. But I'd be interested, maybe it's just me being self-conscious, but how many men feel like they got man boobs? Moobs, I think they call them. Does anybody else worry about man boobs? I don't know.
Well, I don't know because I never really I'm not looking at the men. that have men boobs. I don't.
I've never
I don't know,
seen
man.
you tongue-tied before on a topic.
Yeah. Well,
From now on, Megan, when we want to get Tony speechless, we're just going to text him or talk into his ear. Man boobs, man boobs. He'll freeze up.
Yeah,
freeze up.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I tell you what, Stephen.
So while we record it,
now, Stephen, I'll tell you this though. Now, to keep from getting the man boobs, okay?
Oh,
you just got to exercise. You really do.
What?
You know, yeah. Because what happens is the older you get, the less you use all these muscles, the less you go out and do the things like you used to. And so over time, all the muscles will start deteriorating. And well, we eat a lot and things get heavy. Well, gravity takes it from there. So my wife swears that if women would have never started wearing boobs, they would never have to worry about them sagging. Yes. They said because it helps hold it up. You're not exercising your boobs. You got to. I don't know how. I don't know if you put these little rings on it with chains and then you hold weight underneath it and you do this or something. I don't know. But you have to work them somehow. I don't know how you work them. Okay. But according to the wife, she shouldn't have to wear a bra anymore.
Our producer, Megan, is off camera right now, but she's probably climbed under her desk right about now because I don't know if everybody knows this or not, but our producer, Megan, is Tony's daughter. And I can only imagine how embarrassed she is right now. By the way, Megan, if you can hear me, your dad keeps using a cuss word, exercise. And we're not supposed to say too many cuss words.
Yeah. Well,
that's a cuss word in my book. That
is not. That is what you got to do, Stephen. That's why you got man boobs and I don't. You got to exercise, man. You got to do stuff with them. But I'll go back to the whole wearing a bra thing, and I'm being serious about this. Okay.
Oh, please,
you gotta
please
think
go back
about
to the wearing the bra thing. Yeah.
Go to Google and Google African wild women or something, you know. And what's going to happen is you're going to see these women that live out in the woods, you know, in the Amazon, you know, back out in all that area. Look at their boobies. Are any of their boobies, listen to me,
in fourth grade.
Okay.
In fourth grade, me and my buddies went to the school library and we looked at all those things.
I did too.
The National Geographic.
So now you know the pictures I'm talking about.
Much.
All right. So you know the pictures. Look at them. Do you see any of those boobies hanging? Do you ever see those boobies hanging? Okay. No. You know why? They got muscles in it. And those muscles help. Now, the ones that do sag, those women they're not the ones hauling the water and stuff. Those women that work all day long in them tribes, their boobs are fine. So that tells me Stephen Todd needs to exercise. You need to go to the gym, Stephen. You need to you're a trainer, okay? This trainer will help you understand which muscles to exercise and how to exercise those muscles. All you got to do is go and say, hey, I need a boob job. I just can't afford it. So can you help me do it with muscles?
I had a good trainer for a while. If you remember, he was virtual. My buddy from Landstar was my trainer. And he's a professional bodybuilder, and he got on me every week. And he just, he didn't know what to make of me. We finally amicably parted ways. I think I was his first failure.
Well, Stephen,
30 years of training.
Wait a minute. You said Landstar. Now, Landstar, they have trucks, right? And they drive trucks and all that.
Right.
And so you went and found a truck driver to teach you how to work out.
He is the husband of one of our good friends from corporate Landstar, and I better not say anybody's name on here because I don't want to get anybody upset, but he's a great, great guy. He's a professional bodybuilder, seriously, and he does training online, but he didn't know what to do with me.
Well, you know what you need to you know what you need to do now? You got in a good idea. They need a trainer. They need him to be the trainer for all those guys. Because you know how much time and effort has been put into health when it comes to these truck drivers? They got it. They need exercise.
He's tough.
Honestly, they need it. Landstar needs, and I bet you, if you really dig in, ask your buddies at Landstar, I bet you they have some type of a health system that they offer their drivers. You know, some type of a support line, some type of video where you can video a trainer, somebody. I guarantee you Landstar has it. If they don't, you need to tell them they need it. We need our drivers safe. We need them healthy, right? They need to work out, you know?
Yeah. Hey, speaking of Landstar, what a great new friend we've made. Chris Polk, big agency owner with Blue Ribbon Logistics, Blue Ribbon Podcast. That was spectacular. You have fun?
I did. It's always interesting because you get different type of drivers out there, and you get different kind of guys running trucking companies. It's not all these guys in suit and ties that are running these things. Mostly when you get down to the smaller groups, and I think he said he had like total of 14, 15 vehicles. He had 10 or 11 on the road at the moment. The other ones are getting, repaired or upgraded and stuff. But, it's his passion. It's him telling it like it is. I like him. He's like, you don't need to lease a truck. You need to buy a truck. Well, not everybody has $80,000 to buy that truck and do it this way. But Chris, he's a trucker, but he's also a smart guy that has business sense.
Brilliant.
And if you are going to, the one thing I
Larry
liked about Chris is he said, a real truck driver that's out there driving the road, sweating tears and really making things happen. That's the trucker that we need out there, because he's going to move. He's going to make things happen. But imagine you fill that truck driver up with knowledge about how to run a business, how to do financing, how to get deductions, how to do things, with a business that you've never done before. Man, I can drive a truck. I can fix that truck and repair it. But that's Chris. Chris, it's so funny. I'm watching all the little things come up on the screen of all the things people are typing and stuff. And all of a sudden, one of those suckers said something about, well, he don't believe in this. And man, Chris, I'll be back. I thought he was getting up to leave. No, he was ready to hold on a second. I got to let this guy hear what I got to say. But you know what? That guy cares. That guy, he spends more time doing stuff that's not making him money. It's talking to other drivers. It's helping people. Yeah. That man will go out of his way to help somebody understand how to do something better in their business. It's not giving him any money. He's not benefiting off of this. But he's doing it. Why? Because nobody was there when they needed it, and that's why him and Larry just, came so close together. Larry had this business knowledge that just, it blew Chris away. And it's a great team, buddy. But that's 95% of the market is Chris Polk. That's 95% of this market. It's that size fleet. And him being leased on and dealing with Landstar and dealing with these groups, he knows. He's been through it. And I'm telling people, just listen to him. He's got his own reasonings for things. He's got his own, there may be things he believes in that, maybe not every trucker does, but you know what? A lot of what he has to say is the truth. And if you just listen to the truth, make your own decision. But I like Chris. I like that podcast. Yeah. Hey, did you notice how his screen's always blue? Notice that in the background next time. And, I asked him why. He says, Blue Ribbon Podcast. He said, so I had these, he said, I had these lights that were somebody already had put in this room anyway. You can change the different colors. He said, so I thought blue would be a good color to go with the podcast. So that's why it's blue. So if anybody ever wonders.
Maybe Megan later could edit in a quick screenshot of Chris and you from that podcast so we can see that blue. That's pretty cool. I didn't notice that. As successful as he and Larry's company is, their agency is, their podcast is as much or more successful. And we don't mind plugging their podcast because, number one, they're great friends of ours now. But number two, it's a damn good podcast.
It is.
I shared this with you guys a couple of weeks ago. I don't know if you looked at it or not, but I started Googling phrases like top trucking podcast. And of course, we hope to be there someday ourselves, but we're just getting started. And I came up with like 15 or 20 lists. And I would say 90% of those lists in the top 10 was Larry and Chris's Blue Ribbon podcast. And all the other lists, nobody appeared, that many times. So they've got, what did Megan say? Like 10,000 YouTube subscribers. And that's not counting the other thousands of people that listen to their Spotify and their Apple and all of those things. It's a hell of a podcast. And all they do is they just sit there and they tell it like it is.
They do. You know what, buddy? You know what's so cool? He was talking about CB radios, and it made me remember way back when and how fun it was to take a road trip and actually have a CB and break 19 for a radio check, break, and just messing with people. And I can remember being young, and I can hear the truckers on the other end going, "Kids, get off this damn thing. Kids, get off of here. You don't need to be on here. We use this for work." And then I used to get scared because I used to always think, man, they know who we are. They're going to follow us. They're going to do this. And I remember riding in the car with my parents, and we used to do that, woo, woo, pull your arm up and down for them to pull the horn and stuff. Man, it was great. Them CB radios are amazing. Well, guess what? People don't use those CB radios like they did in the past. They really don't,
It kind of died off in the late 70s. It kind of started to tail off. In fact, what pissed off truck drivers? My older brothers had CB radios, and when a bunch of teenagers started getting CB radios in the 70s and they were yakking on all the channels, that started to piss off some of the truck drivers because there were kids just on there chasing what.
But what's going to be cool, Stephen? What I want to do is I'd like to go out and start giving us a list of all the different like slangs in trucking, the terminology in trucking, all the stuff we put together in HR that, we're trying to tell our employees. Well, I want to do that with the truckers. I want to get truckers, like what does 120 stand for? What is 410? What are these codes? Smoky,
there are some crazy, funny, obscene names and nicknames for things. I got a list from a pilot car buddy of mine who's from the trucking industry, and I'll share that with you guys, and we'll just have some fun with that on the podcast. They are so funny and clever, some of the names they come up with, things you see while you're out driving a truck. But that should be interesting. As we record this podcast, we're right around Good Friday, and while we're waiting on you to join us, Megan and I, and by the way, we're going to get you a T-shirt, Tony, because your favorite response when you're late for a meeting, you're not late that often, but you're late sometimes. We're going to put on your T-shirt. Well, I might put it on your tombstone too. Oh, shit. I'll be there in 5 minutes. Right? That's what you say, isn't it?
Yeah.
I told Megan, I said, we've heard it. We've heard it before. Oh, shit. I'll be there in 5 minutes.
Yeah. Well, I try to be there.
We're going to put you in a T-shirt.
I bounce around too much, man. I got too many things, people want me in too many places. I go to my calendar and there's already 2 more meetings. Like, what do they think? I don't have to go to the restroom. I mean, I need time. So it's all right. That's been my life, my whole life, 5 minutes late. But you know what?
We're just jerking your chain.
And once I get there, I'm good, buddy. So you don't worry about that.
Oh, wind you up. But yeah, it's about Good Friday while we're here, and Megan and I were just shooting the what. And Good Friday, I'm not a great Christian man. I'm a practicing Christian. I got a lot of work to do. But when I think of Good Friday, I think of Jesus dying on the cross and all that good stuff. And Megan just looks back in the camera at me and she goes, "Isn't that the day they all eat cakes with babies in them?" I said, "What are you talking about?" But you know something about that too. Is that a Stroncheck family tradition?
Actually, no. What it is,
eating cakes with babies in them.
And it's called a king cake. Hold on a second. I want to see if I can get you looking for trying to find a definition for this thing, and
I've
why
lived
I don't know, man.
Life.
It's a round cake. It's around Mardi Gras time.
Yeah.
And it's got the center hole out of it, so it looks like a big donut that, but anyway, it's this big donut looking thing that ain't an actual circle, kind of oval and has a hole in the middle. But if you eat it throughout this thing, you're going to find this little plastic baby. Now they do warn you that the baby's
not edible.
No, it's not edible. It is not edible. It hurts when you bite it. I think it bites back. So no, you don't want that. So honestly, I don't know what a king cake is.
What in the world's it got to do with Good Friday?
I don't know. I have no idea. Why is a king cake?
Somebody's pulling up. Megan, we got to be careful when he pulls up.
Well, let's see.
We better be careful.
King cake
here.
Explained. Let's see what it says. The tradition. Right. It says here.
I see a couple. All right. I see a couple
king
babies.
Cake tradition explained. It says American ushers in the new year with diets and lifestyles resolutions galore. But many people across the globe, particularly, and if you notice, I'm having to do this because I got bifocals on and I can't see the screen. Particularly,
but you don't have man boobs. You don't have man boobs yet, so
no.
All right.
So particularly those from Catholic countries celebrate the calendar change with a sweet pastry known as a king cake. It first appears in bakery cases at the beginning of the year and found at the center of celebration throughout early spring. Some associate it with Mardi Gras. See, I was correct on that. Others celebrate it with Epiphany, Epiphany. Epiphany. There you go.
That's a religious term.
Okay. King cakes are eaten on January 6th in honor of that. And 12th, 9th, what is that? Which historically marks the arrival of 3 wise men kings. The plastic baby hidden inside the cake today is a nod to the story. King cake also appears on the tables throughout the conventional season, which runs from I can't read this stuff, but anyway, it is. It's a cool cake, and I'm sure we'll show them the picture and what it looks like.
There's the baby.
There's the baby. There's the baby. But don't eat it. Oh, there it is. I see it on the screen now.
Do you remember one of your boys' birthday parties where your other kids devilishly went out and bought 100 of those little suckers and layered his cake with them? Do you remember that?
I do remember that. They made a cake and they put lots and lots of little babies in it. Again, I don't know why they do this. It's a good cake. It really is. I like it, but you got to be cautious. Just don't eat the baby.
Those Stroncheck family traditions and family meals. God, I bet there's a story a day.
Dude, it's
going back with
down there. It's all them Cajuns. It's them coonasses from Louisiana. I love the food. I love the food.
Well, happy Good Friday. I'm going to stick with my Lord and Savior Jesus and leave the baby eating cakes to the rest of the folks.
You're saying all this, and now our podcast isn't going to get good views because you're talking about eating babies. This is not probably a good thing to do.
I think your National Geographic boob story has probably already got us off the air.
Let's not go back to the pickles. So,
my God, let's get into trucking.
What are we supposed to be talking about today?
Well, we're gonna talk about that sad bridge hit fatality, truck parking, the energy bill. But let's start off with one of your favorite topics: fuel, diesel fuel, fossil fuel, and fuel charge and cost plus. And that's about all the words I know. What's going on? What's on your mind?
Well, here's the thing. A lot of people out there just in trucking don't understand how fuel really works. I mean, you go down the road, you look up at a sign and you say, okay, this is how much the fuel is going to cost me. And even that's confusing because you better watch it quick, because if you don't watch if it's cash or credit, that diesel price goes up and down. And so you got to watch that because, if you're using a credit card, they got a fee they're paying, and they got a card company they got to pay. So there's different prices. So anyway, it's complicated. People have a rough time figuring out what's the stupid price at a truck stop. And then you stop and ask yourself, man, everybody keeps talking about this big savings they got. They got this retail minus deal. They got this cost plus deal. The best of deal. What does all this mean? Because today the number one expense for a trucking company is fuel, right? Well, fuel, no matter how high it goes or how low it goes, is still a major factor in transporting that freight. So what I want to do is I want to take you back in time a little bit, okay? And back when I was young, I can remember going to the gas station and needing to get gas for a go-kart we had, and all we had was $1, okay? And I remember getting gas all over me. I mean, all over me. It was down my shirt and everything. It was all over the bucket. And
I hope you weren't smoking a cigarette at the time.
No, I wasn't smoking at that time. But the thing is, I had all this stuff on me and it overflowed, and I got pissed off at my brother because I'm like, why? Why didn't you stop it? He says, I thought we were going to not need the whole $1. So I put it just kept going. It wouldn't stop. I told my brother, anyway, I got mad. What it was, fuel back then was 79 cents a gallon. So wait a minute. Yeah. So he was waiting for it to get to the $1, because we only needed 25 cents left because we want to buy some gum. Okay. So I told him, well, we'll pump this, but only give 75 cents. That's all I want. 75 cents. He just kept going, and it got to 75 cents, but it overflowed. It was already over a gallon of water or a gallon of gas. So anyway, I can remember when the price of fuel was nothing. What did you do? Everybody went around and got in their car and said, you know what we're going to do for entertainment? Because, growing up, my family didn't have a lot of money and stuff. But the one thing we always had was a car. And no matter what the car is, including the station wagon, we had this one station wagon. It was so amazing. We could get in the back and, we never put seatbelts on. So, hell, we were riding in the back, playing games, doing all kinds of stuff. Well, back then I can remember how my parents always said, we ain't got money to go out to eat. We can't go to McDonald's. But you know what we can do? Let's go take a ride. We're going to take a ride? Yeah, let's take a ride. Today, every time I think about going somewhere, I think about, do I have enough gas? How much is that going to cost me? Because where I live, it takes 15, 20 minutes to get to McDonald's. Okay. Do I really want to go to McDonald's? And I've got a big F-350 diesel truck. It don't get that great MPG, And so when you think about it, back then, nobody cared about how much gas was. Nobody gave a crap about it. It was gas. You spilled it all over the place. Who cares? It's just gas. But nowadays, dude, you go down there, I go fill my truck up and it's $300. I'm freaking out. I'm like, wait a minute, $300? I can't afford to go anywhere anymore. So guess what?
Yeah.
People just don't drive anymore unless they have to. So all the fun we had, all the trips, all the things where mom used to say, hey, let's go jump in the station wagon. Let's go take a ride. And we would ride for hours. We would stop at a place, get some ice cream. No, what was it? Tasty Freeze. That's what it was.
Oh, yeah.
We would stop at a Tasty Freeze, walk up, get a burger or get a hot dog, get some, and get that ice cream cone, eat it, get back in that truck, car, and just go. And my mother loved driving. My mom loved going all over this country. I can remember we had another car, and I forgot what it was. Maybe it was a Grand Marquis. It was something. It had a huge window in the back. I remember we used to fight, me and my little brother, over who gets to lay in the window. Lay in the window. Now, today, if you're going down the road and you see somebody with a family of kids and one of them's laying in the back window, okay, messing, playing with something, you're going to call 911. There's some idiots on the road. Get that guy pulled over. He's going to kill his kid. Not
I used to have a Grand Marquis. Yeah, you
Did
can
you?
sleep everybody in the back. I used to drive my boys to baseball tournaments, and I was too cheap to get a hotel the first night, so they just lay down in the back of the Grand Marquis.
There you go. There you go.
That's a big vehicle.
So when you look at fuel and you look at that, things have definitely changed. But the one thing you got to understand is back then, people started getting freaked out when fuel got to that $1. Okay. And then it got to $1.10, then it got to $1.20, and then $40, and then $2. Well, what happened in the world, we had to make sure that us people that love to drive, we wasn't getting gouged. We wasn't going to get screwed when it come to buying our fuel. And so the government put together this, this thing regarding the 5 oil companies, the 5 sisters. And what it was put together with the government to monitor. The Department of Energy had created a system to make sure that you and I, if that fuel just keeps going up, is it because the fuel needs to go up, or is it because somebody's just wanting to make more money? Okay. And, it's keep from price gouging. And a lot of people heard about price gouging back then. Everybody was worried about it because one minute it's this price, next minute it's this price. And Uncle Joe's making all the money in his pocket. He's not paying that for the fuel. So they came out with a system, and this system was a way to manage and monetize the information that came back from, you got a rack. Okay. Imagine this. If you ever look at a big 18-wheeler tanker, at the top, they got places where all the fuel goes in. And so they pull up to this place, big pipes up, and it's called a rack. And it's like at a refinery, okay? Or past a refinery after it's been refined. Yeah. So they drive up to the sucker, they fill it up. They buy all that fuel in this big tank, and then that tanker truck goes to this gas station, this truck stop, this gas station, this truck stop, this gas station, this fleet, dump it at their location. They got a bulk facility. I go and dump it here, back and forth. And hey, I got a little extra fuel left. And oh, by the way, I'm going to transport across the border from this state to that state. So I got to go on this a telephone in here and pay phone. And I got to type this special code in to let them know I'm moving fuel from here to here. And, they try to track all this stuff. But that rack where you buy that fuel from, they don't have them on every street corner. Let's just say, and I don't know how many racks are out there today that are active when it comes to the diesel pricing, but I think there's over 600 of them across the whole country. So what happens is every time you go buy fuel somewhere, it started at a refinery getting refined. It may be another country. It may be hauled over here on big tank, what do they call those? Big boats. Huh?
Oh,
what is it?
Big old ship. Tanker ship.
Freight. Yeah, there you go. Yep. Anyway, great big ship, that has all this fuel in it. Bring it over here. It either gets refined over here at the refineries. They turn it into different type of fuel types and all this stuff. Well, this whole process, everywhere you go through that line, somebody's making a little money off of it from here to there, from here to there, here to there. Okay. So anyway, when this organization was put together to monitor this, it helped us protect us because the fleets at that time, when they would go to a shipper and get a contract for a year to haul their freight, the challenge came when that shipper says, Mr. Smith, I want you to haul my freight. And Mr. Smith goes, but my rate went up. Well, why did it go up? Well, fuel right now is almost $1.90 a gallon. And we've got to cover that cost. Well, the shipper goes, well, heck, buddy, that ain't my problem. You can figure out, cover your costs. Yeah, but my rate's got to go up because of that. So after a while, it got to a point where, and the magic number, I don't know why, was around $1.20, $1.21, that the fleet started agreeing with the shipper that, look, we get when fuel is around $1.20, $1.21, but anytime it goes beyond that, Mr. Shipper, you must reimburse me as a fuel surcharge. Okay. So imagine this. Fuel's $2 a gallon, okay? At $2 a gallon, if that trigger is $1.20, that leaves 80 cents a gallon. So I take a load that's 1,000 miles. 5 miles to the gallon is 200 gallons, correct? So you got 200 gallons of gas or diesel that you're going to burn transporting that load. At that point, if you're over $1.20 by 80 cents, you take the 200 gallons times 80 cents, and Mr. Shipper, that's your fuel surcharge. You owe me 100% of everything above $1.20 of fuel I burn. Okay?
There is a point to this story. Now I'm following you. Okay.
So when you look at that, you're like, okay, well, hey, Mr. Carrier, I don't care if that stuff goes to $5 a gallon or if that stuff is, $1.29. I'm going to make a little extra money off of a fuel surcharge. And that way, I believe it is fair because the shipper and the carrier cannot control fuel. They can't control what energy bills are out there. They can't control what's going to happen with the freight rates, or maybe there's a pipeline shut down. Maybe somebody hacked into a computer system and shut down the whole East Coast and you can't buy fuel. Okay. So understanding fuel surcharge has a purpose. Okay. Because you can't control fuel. Well, what's happened after that is you've got to also roll in the other factors such as what is your cost per, gallon for fuel, but what also is your MPG? How much fuel are you going to burn? So that shipper and carrier gets together and they talk about this. If that shipper says, I don't care what kind of truck you haul or anything, but I do know that the average Joe out there is getting, say, 7 miles to the gallon. Well, that's going to be my bench. That's my mark, is saying that, if you get worse than 7 miles a gallon, I don't care. That's up to you. If you get better than 7 miles a gallon,
Chris's story?
Good luck.
He had a guy that had 10 or 11.
10. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Some of these guys get really good. But that MPG affects how many gallons you're going to burn. So the better truck you got, the less fuel surcharge that shipper should get. Why? Because you, the carrier, you're the driver, you're the owner operator, whoever bought that truck, spent big bucks to get that 10 miles to the gallon. They also keep their foot off that throttle. Okay. They don't just haul butt everywhere. They're not, these truckers out there that just love to go fast. They just want to get from point A to point B. They burn rubber, No, if you take care of your truck, you do all the extra cool little things to it, put wings and everything else, guess what? You'll get better MPG. You get better MPG, you're going to burn less fuel. So at the end of the day, should the shipper benefit off that carrier? Because carrier, I'm sorry, but you spent $200,000 for this truck. You got great MPG. You got all these other factors, but wait a minute. Why am I having to reimburse you this fuel surcharge at a rate that isn't even associated with your trucks? Now, here's another problem that comes into this. How do you know what the fuel price should be back then? How do you know what these numbers are? Well, CPC was an organization that was put together to do all this managing to make sure people didn't get gouged, right? Today, it's called OPIS, Oil Price Information Service. I think Dow Jones, one of the big stock guys, one of the money guys, they all own OPIS now. But OPIS is where this started. And the way they did it is they went to all those racks we were talking about. And they said, this rack today sold this many gallons of this type of fuel. Then they go and they find out, well, how much did they sell it for? Well, they had 200 tankers come through here. Okay. How much did each tanker pay for it? They take all those numbers, they throw it in a bucket, add it all up, divide the numbers up, throw the high, low, outer, does some magic voodoo to it, and out comes an average. This is what that rack's cost was average on this day leaving this rack. All right, so think this for a second. Average. If I am a guy and I only have one truck stop and I only buy so many gallons, I'm contributing just to a small amount. If I'm a Pilot, Flying J, TA, Petro, Loves, any of these big guys, do you think they're buying the same number of gallons? No, they're buying a whole lot more. They're getting at a much better price. So that average cost at a truck stop, is made up a bunch of different numbers. One is that lovely rack cost. What is the true cost of fuel? The next factor you got to factor into this is freight. Because here's where the rack is. Here's where the truck stop is. I've got to transport it from here to here. So somebody is going to charge you so many cents per gallon to transport that from point A to point B. Well, that rack is not an equal distance to every fuel station that it's going to deliver to. And sometimes you will go way past one rack, go 100 miles to another rack and get fuel to bring back because you get a much better deal at that other rack. Why?
That's why certain towns and regions are higher or lower in some cases.
You got it. And so now you got freight you got to figure out too. So now Opus or somebody's got to go out there and figure out, all right, what truck stop or gas station, what rack do they actually pull from? And then what do we think their freight's going to cost? Now let's talk freight for a second. Freight is different. If I pay you to transport my hazardous material, which is this diesel from point A from the rack to my fuel stop, you're going to charge me a good penny to do that. Okay. Why? Because you got to have good drivers, safe drivers. Not anybody just is going to haul, that many gallons of, explosive stuff down the road. So you got one guy, one truck doing it, and you have to pay somebody. Well, they're making good money off of you. Well, what if you have 1,000 truck stops to transport it to? Well, they're going to give you a much better deal to do those deliveries, and they're probably going to split that up between all kind of regional groups to transport that and get better deals. So, of course, that bigger location, their freight cost is probably better than that guy that only has one truck stop and their freight cost. Now, the next problem with freight is, what if I've got 100 truck stops and I own my own trucking company that hauls my own fuel? So now my freight is twice as much as everybody else's. Well, why? Because it can be. Why not? Because you got to cover my freight costs, don't you? Yes. I'm sorry, my freight costs a little higher. Why? Because the people that haul my stuff, are very good. They have better equipment, all this stuff. Oh, by the way, yeah, I do own them. So you got to look at that freight number. So is that freight number right? Is it accurate? Is it fair? So you got to dig into that. Next thing you got to look at around doing cost plus deals. And the theory behind cost plus, retail minus, and all this is the different ways to calculate how you get money. How do you get a savings? So now that you know what racks are and you know that you got to haul them, you got to get it to where you're going, now you have these costs. The next thing is taxes. Okay. The way they collect fuel tax today is on the front end. Okay. So if I go pull that tank and that tanker truck has X number of gallons in it and it's going to be delivered to the state of Texas locations, then when you buy that fuel at that rack, you already know how many gallons at 20 cents a gallon in Texas that tax is covering. So they can go ahead and grab that tax. They know 20 cents. We got it. We don't have to worry about who sells it and all this other stuff. And, we kind of got it on the front end. All right. So you got tax. You got state tax. You got federal tax. You have county taxes in some cases. You got city taxes in some cases. You even got tax that's called a cleanup fee. Let's say there's a major accident somewhere. Big spill happens with hazardous material and all this stuff. It just gets messy. Well, somebody's got to clean it up. Now, hopefully at the end, whoever made the mess, whoever had the problem, their insurance ends up reimbursing the state or whatever to clean it. But until then, somebody's got to pay for it. Well, what they do is they say, we're going to go to that pump and we're going to add a little bitty, maybe a 0.05 of a penny to every single gallon. And we're going to leave it there until we collect enough money back to pay back this expense. So you get those kind of calculations in that fee as well in fuel. So now you add all these things up. You got what the rack charges for fuel. You got what the freight is. Now you got all these taxes. You add all that together in a bucket, and that supposedly is the truck stop's cost for that fuel. Okay.
Is there a term for that?
That is cost. Yeah, you got cost plus deals. So with cost plus deals, I'm telling you, my cost is this number every day. And anything above that, okay, I can give you. So if I give you a cost plus 6 cents, that means that if my cost is $2, you're going to pay me $2.06 for every gallon of gas you buy that day from me. Now, the next question you ask yourself about cost. The cost information I just gave you, if you get it from a truck stop and the truck stop says, this is what my cost actually is. They've figured out all the magic voodoo hoodoo stuff in the background and says, this is what my cost is per gallon. Okay. Other people go, we're going to use Opus. Opus is the benchmark for groups like Love's Truck Stops. So Love's is not saying, here's my cost. What Love's is saying is, we're going to use Opus, which is a benchmark system that's been out there. Used to be called CPC, that helped make sure that the oil companies wasn't gouging people and all this. These are good guys. Their job is to keep track of all this fuel stuff and what's happening. They do a lot of analytics. And these costs they come up with, they are what they feel the freight is. That's what they feel the truck stop's pulling from. That truck stop may not pull from. So these are averages. These are not an actual number you live by. And you don't get the cost from when they bought it today. It's a couple of days old before that number is actually used in trucking. And that's another way the big oil companies, do their thing. But with this cost factor you look at, if Love says you're going to pay cost plus 6, they're going to say, go to Opus, ask Opus what the cost number is, and then add 6 cents to it. Now, the other way, if you don't buy a lot of fuel, they're not going to give you their cost plus so much. They're going to say, wait a minute, you've got 10 trucks. You're going to buy X number of gallons from my network of truck stops. I'm going to give you a retail minus deal. That means if the retail price is $3, I'm going to give you 20 cents off a gallon for every gallon you buy. But here's the hitch. To get that deal or my cost plus deal, you must buy X number of gallons through this network. If you fail to do this, either one, your rate automatically went up, you owe me a difference, or B, I'm going to come back to you and say, nay, you only bought X number of gallons. You only bought 60% of what you said you were going to buy from me. You bought, so I'm not going to renew that discount at that amount. I'm going to now give you this amount. Why? Because you didn't live up as the truck driver or the fleet. You didn't buy the number of gallons you should have bought that you thought you would. Why? The economy, things happen. But if you could have and you didn't, then why should you keep getting those same deals, those same discounts? Yeah. So when you look at retail minus, it's taking the retail and giving you a discount off. Now they have what they call a third piece here, best of. There are times that cost plus, let's just use 10 cents, when a cost plus 10 is not as good as a retail minus 10. Okay? So depending on what the truck stop's cost is, depending on what they're selling it for, what's in between is what they call a spread. So if I pay $1 for it, I sell it for $1.20, I have a 20-cent spread. Now, if you're using averages of the market, averages at a rack, then you're thinking it's the average truck stop. It's the average fuel stop. Not a big company, not a big Flying J pilot, and not just an independent. It's average, okay? So the first thing you can factor in is when you look at cost plus, because it's based on averages and numbers, it's not true. So with not the true information, not the accurate based on you and that person, cost deals can fluctuate. And if you don't watch the stock market and everything else in the NYMEX, you will never know whether or not that cost plus retail amount, whatever that deal's good or not for you. So how do you do this? You got to track it. You've got to go out and look at what everybody else is doing, because that spread can be as little as 6 cents. That spread right now can be as great as $1 per gallon. That means there are locations that are making $1 per gallon off of you today. Not all of them, not all of them. The ones that are, why they're making $1 off of you? Because they're spending hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars hedging. They buy fuel months before they go grab it and pull it. They fund the whole fuel market. So when Flying J, Pilot, TA, Petro, Loves, when these guys are out there and you go, man, I heard that they're making this big of a spread. They're making all this money off of me. Yeah, but you know why? Because they have this huge freaking expense over here that nobody realizes that they're having to do to get those big deals. The key is, how much of that are they passing on to the fleet? How much are they passing on to the driver? So wisdom, go ask. I don't care if you've got one truck. Call Loves. Pick up the phone, call them. Heck, Loves will give 10 cents off a gallon for you and me on our gas cars. Okay? You want to save money? You go look. Love's got, hundreds and hundreds of stops out there all over the country. They're everywhere. And I guarantee they're going to kick butt and keep growing. Find out. You travel at all. You travel in an RV, anything. Call Loves. Say, hey, I'm not a trucker, but can I get a discount on your fuel card? They go, well, how many gallons you think you're going to use? Okay. What do you think you're going to do here? And you can get a good discount. It's happening. Why? Because there is a lot of money in fuel. There is. And it's going to go up and down, but you've got to track this stuff.
Tony, as I've been listening to you, if you want to take a drink here real quick. Yeah. We're going to talk about the energy bill in DC here in a second. But what I'm struck by is we live in a society today of short sound bites. We have short attention spans. I did stay awake, by the way, for your entire fuel story. I'm betting Sunday afternoons at the Stroncheck house growing up for your kids, listening to Daddy talk about fuel price theory on the front porch. I bet that was exhilarating for the kids, but I'm just kidding. But no, what I'm struck by is in DC, we hear the politicians and pundits talking little short sound bites. And not to get political, but the popular thing nowadays by the party in charge is to say, oh, those oil companies, oh, those truck stops, they're gouging you citizens. Why don't we? It's too bad we can't take the time to hear the story behind the story that you just told. Yep. Here's why they're making a profit sometimes, because they put their butt on the line 6 months ago or a year ago. But we don't operate in that world nowadays. It's just these short little cutesy zings and arrows that the politicians throw. But no, actually, that was, all kidding aside, that was fascinating to hear the whole chain and why prices are what they are, and why one truck stops charging this and another one's charging that. But what's the whole, just to wrap this up, Tony, what's the big lesson for the trucking community out there listening to your
the lesson is
here?
Continue to look into this and learn, because there is one more factor to this equation, and that is, what is the IFTA refundable tax? Okay, so I've got to continue my story just a little longer, because what does matter today, if you're over 26,000 pounds, 3 or more axles, there's a regulation that says that you're a commercial vehicle, you're going to be traveling state to state, you're going to have IFTA. You got to have this. Why? Because, Stephen, another problem is you got a truck that has a 150-gallon tank on the left, 150-gallon tank on the right. That's 300 gallons. You told me a second ago that one driver's getting 10 miles to the gallon. That's 3,000 miles that guy can drive. 3,000 without getting fuel. So how far is it from Florida to California? Could you do it in 3,000 miles?
3,000 to 5,000 miles.
All right. Well, you can do it. You can get across there in several thousand miles. But guess what? Do you think all those states in between want you just to buy that fuel in Florida, get to California, buy fuel in California, come back? Yeah. They need somehow to collect it on the way. So when you look at this, the first thing you do is you have to understand IFTA says that you pay fuel tax on every gallon of fuel you do what? You burn. They don't care about the buying. Sure, that's when the collection of tax happens, is when you're at the pump or at the end of the quarter. But the problem is, if you were able to take that tax rate away, pull it away, okay? Let's just give you an example. State A has a tax rate of 20 cents. Let's say Texas. Let's say California has tax rates of almost $1, less than $1, but it's right at almost $1. So just for easy math, 20 cents to $1, that's 80 cents difference. Right now, it's $6 a gallon in California. Right now, it's $4 in Texas. You do the math, you take away the tax rate. And when you do, what's left is really what the true cost of fuel is. Now, that example there was kind of bad because, that price I gave you, heck, it still probably is okay. Buy your fuel in Texas. It makes sense. But when you have a state on one side that's 10 cents, state on the other side it's not, and you look at fuel costs, if you don't know what the state tax rate is and take that away, you don't know what that fuel is really going to be. Because guess what? Are you going to buy just the number of gallons to cover the miles you did in that state? Then you're golden. Just buy that number of gallons. But what if that fuel is cheaper? Buy the extra, because guess what? Texas will give you that extra tax back. California, almost $1, will give you all that back at the end of the quarter. So the most important part when people buy is get your discounts. Number 2, take that state tax rate away when you look at where to decide to buy fuel. And when you do that, don't worry about who you're going to owe money, who you're not. A lot of people say, I just don't want to pay a $2,000 IFTA bill at the end of the quarter. You would rather spend that $2,000 during the quarter and not get it back, and maybe buy more fuel in places that are a lot more expensive. So if you want to optimize, and fuel is your number one expense, look at your cost deals, look at your retail minus deals, look at your network, and don't just look at your network today and sign it and never look back. You need to go and look at this on a regular basis and make sure they're giving you discounts, make sure you're getting what you need, and make sure the Joneses, what they got going on. Everybody has a deal card. Well, everybody has discounts. All you got to go is work it. And then after you get those discounts, then teach your drivers about tax pricing and how it works. Our Fuel Finder product, the cool thing about what we do with FedEx is we showed FedEx Ground. Here's all of your terminal fuel and where you get good fuel deals out to all their fleets and the owner operators and small TSPs that haul for them, everything. They can go to any of their bulk facilities, any of their terminals, and pull fuel. FedEx went out and got huge deals for that fuel that goes there. And they're telling you as a fleet that's doing this, buy here from us. I'll give it to you at my cost. We're not making any money. And sometimes it's 30 or 40 cents a gallon less. Okay. But somehow these drivers just, where are they? Which ones have it? Who has the better price? but they'll stop at a truck stop and spend 60 cents more a gallon at that truck stop for fuel and gripe that they're not making a big enough profit. So it's knowledge. It's knowing where the truck stops are at, knowing all these deals, putting all this information together, and then giving a simple tool like Fuel Finder to your drivers that says, here's where you should buy. And then you do fuel purchase optimization. And ProMiles Online does that. How many gallons to buy and where to buy it at what location. Save another 30 or 40 cents off a gallon of that. So there are ways to save off of fuel where it's at today. But Stephen, what's up with this whole energy bill that's going on? Can you tell me what you've learned about that?
Yeah. So Congress, ever so many years, kind of like they do with the 5-year trucking plan, they'll take up the topic of energy. And as you might imagine, with the split in Congress in Washington, D.C., the two sides have kind of taken up. And the Republicans here just recently passed a major proposed overhaul of the energy sector. And basically, just to simplify, Tony, what they're doing and requesting of this bill. And by the way, Biden's already said he's going to veto it if that bill ever got to him, which it won't, because the Senate's going to do their own thing and then they're going to have to compromise. But the Republican bill basically wants to take back some of the executive orders and the powers that President Biden has taken. And you've heard the complaints from the oil industry where they're crying foul, saying that he's making it tougher to get a permit to drill oil and, those types of things. So basically, the Republican bill would kind of give a boost back to fracking, the traditional fossil fuel industry, promote fracking again, make it easier for the oil companies to pump oil. By the way, with all the complaints you do hear about this administration, and I try to be impartial, did you know that the United States, even today, 2 years into the Biden industry, is still by far the leading oil producing country in the world, the United States. So when you were talking about shipping oil in earlier, yeah, we still do that, of course, but we're the biggest producer. They passed the bill. Only 4 Democrats voted for it. In the Senate, which is controlled by the Democrats, they, of course, are going to come back with their energy bill, which is going to, be more promoting of the clean energy industry, promoting wind, the climate change, the electricity, that type of thing. So when it's all said and done, it'll be interesting if the House and Senate even do compromise on an energy bill, or whether we just kind of like we do with the deficit every year and the budget, just kind of punt it down the road.
Yeah. Well, what's interesting and also scary, I got a phone call from my nephew back a couple of months ago, and he says, Uncle Tony, he said, man, things are tough. I just got my electric bill / gas bill in, and I don't know why, but it was over $400. He says, and I've never paid that much in the wintertime. And we looked into it, thinking, well, man, I don't know, because up here where I live in Colorado, our electricity isn't that bad because we are ran, I think it's like 75, 80% by solar is what's powering all this stuff. So, I mean, it's not like when I live in Texas, a hot summer month, you'll spend $400, $500 on an electric bill because it's hot and you're running your AC, right? Well, up here, it's kind of the opposite. It's to keep you warm in the wintertime. Well, if you have a natural gas running to your home right now, that cost jumped, hundreds, of dollars a month. I mean, I don't know how many times it multiplied, but it's like, you got to be kidding. And then I turned around and my daughter calls me up and says, Dad, how I was leaking water with the water system? I must be leaking gas because my bill's over 400 something bucks. I went, oh no, I thought Hunter's was because he didn't take, his air conditioner out of the window, and it's not sealed good. And, and maybe it's just not being efficient, but oh my gosh, what's wrong with yours now? And we dug into it. It was the cost for natural gas. It just skyrocketed over this last winter. And so imagine
there's
this,
a lot of
Stephen.
finger pointing.
Well, imagine this, Stephen. You were normally paying $40 a month for gas. Okay. Now you're spending $300 a month for gas. And a family barely can survive as it is and you go from, a $300 increase on your bill every month it's cold. So far this whole winter, they add up all the months and what it cost them. Now, I'm freaking out for them. Man, natural gas, you guys are in trouble. Maybe we ought to put a propane tank out there like we have up here in my house and Tori's next door. I said, we'll just haul propane over there. Well, guess what? I got my propane bill. 400 and something gallons of propane was over $1,300.
Tony, what's causing these increases? What's causing these increases?
Well,
the Republicans blame the Democrats blame the Republicans. What's causing it?
I think part of it is stupidity. And let me tell you why. We are pulling. Now let's go back to somebody that has natural gas coming to their house. Okay. Imagine this. The gas is being pulled out of the ground. It is being piped down. You're getting it to your house. You're now burning it. Okay. So you're going, half a mile, 2 miles, whatever it may be, 5 miles to get that gas to where you're at. You're not traveling far. You don't have to pay a trucker. You don't have to worry about the trucker's fuel costs going up. You ain't got all these other crap. Why should their fuel fluctuate like this? Why should their fuel cost? They're fracking, everything else. They're not fracking up here right now. They're not doing all this. It's already done. Their cost is already in bed, finished. Why should it go up? It's because they look at the world. The regulations allow these fuel companies to regulate their price. Remember, go back to the whole thing of we don't want to get screwed. We don't want to get gouged. We want to make sure we're getting a fair price. Let them make a fair profit. But this should be fair, right? Why should somebody in the state of Colorado that lives here locally care there's a war in Ukraine? There is problems with countries getting natural gas, and so all their rates are going crazy out there, right? Why should it make my rates go up too? But that's how it works, because it allows them to go up on their rate, because over there they're having a tough time. They're dying. They're having all these problems. But what? We can increase my rate. Does it cost go up? No. My only question is where's all that extra money going? Yeah. Where's that extra money going? So I don't really know, Stephen, all the whole ins and outs and how all those things work. I know enough to be dangerous, because the first thing I did, I called the company. Look, I got kids. They're starving to death, and you're trying to charge them $300 a piece a month. At 4 kids, at $300 a month, that's $1,200 a month that I'm going to have to help them with. If I got to help, how can I do this? How can anybody live and eat, pay your family, pay your bills, and survive if you're spending $500 a month heating your house? You have to heat it. You're not going to freeze. It's free. Now, there are groups up here, just so everybody knows, there are groups you can go to that will help subsidize part of that. You only make so much money. You only get so much. They'll actually give it back, but it's a month-by-month thing. You better apply for it now. There are grants and things out there to try to help people. The mid-class, you ain't getting nothing. You make too much money. I'm sorry, but that's part of these energy bills that I do believe in. We've got to make sure we change things. If we're being regulated because of some other country or some other place across this country, or even another county, another city, another state, it doesn't matter. We're buying natural gas from ourselves. We're pulling it from ourselves. We're creating, more expense for people that are barely surviving. And so that's where fuel cost. We do need them down. But you know what I don't want? I don't want our cost to do like it is doing in other countries when it's $10 and $25 a gallon, $30 a gallon. It's out there like that. So we don't have it like that bad.
Kind of like the other country of California. Yeah.
Could be.
Their gas costs are crazy. Hey, before we get to the, we want to show some love to the oversized, overweight, specialized transportation world. We're going to talk about that very sad bridge hit, but Megan's probably going to turn this into 2 podcasts by now. But do we have time for a quick fuel story? You when you were talking earlier about your brother spilling all that gas on you, it reminded me of a really, I'm laughing, but it's not funny, a really crazy, horrific story from my childhood. Do I got time real quick?
Sure, go for it.
Okay.
Good.
So I grew up in this little town, and they didn't have a lot of tourism, but for 1 year period, and my older brother was hired to help work it. They had this cage outside of this big hunting store, ammunition and hunting store. And believe it or not, they had a live bear in that cage. And it went on for like 2 or 3 months. And my brother and others had the job of kind of standing by that cage. And as tourists would come by and walk up, they'd talk to the bear and look at the bear. And it was one of those bears where back in those days, Tony, it didn't even have a mask on. He could have reached through that cage and bit him.
Oh my gosh.
Well, people started bringing like sodas and stuff. And the owners didn't like it at first of the store, but then it kind of turned into a big tourism thing, and they started letting the bears drink from their soda can.
Mm-hmm.
And so people would put soda in there, and everybody thought that was cool. And of course the bear just loved it. And but one day, unbelievably sad, somebody, and I happened to be there at the time, unfortunately. My brother wasn't there, but another guy was that I knew. Somebody, a real asshole, pardon my language, slipped in a soda can fuel, gasoline fuel. There's always idiots like that, there, right? And this damn bear, before anybody knew it, started lapping up all of this gasoline.
Oh my gosh.
And everybody was like, oh my God, what's going to happen? Well, about 2 minutes later, this bear, I swear, he started going crazy, and he moved the bars just enough. And the next thing we know, he pops out and he frickin' starts running into town, this bear galloping after drinking all of this gasoline.
He probably needed something to drink to wash it down.
And I swear I'm running down the street, no more than 10 feet in front of the bear. And this bear, within about 2 minutes of his running, gets within about 100 feet of this big group of people standing out in front of the general store. And then all of a sudden, Tony, without any explicable notice, the bear just, boom, keeled over.
Oh, shit. He ran out of gas.
You son of a gun.
Did he?
That was my punchline.
Was it really?
Megan.
Oh, shit.
Megan, I tried foul. That was my freaking punchline.
That was good. That was good. I was trying to be a smart ass about the running out of gas, but I thought she was going to tell you should have had unleaded than regular. Hey, Stephen.
Got it.
Stephen, let me tell you a true story. Okay. And I'll make this short too.
Well, that one was true, but
I had a good guy out there that I know. His name is Chris. I love the man. I'll love him till the day I die. But Chris and I were taking a trip, and we were going to Opus. And Opus wanted me to come and present how to run fuel optimization. Why is it important to optimize your purchases? Okay. And know where to buy and how many buy. Because the last thing you want to do is get stuck somewhere without fuel. Okay. So you just got to make sure you watch this stuff. But if you could save money and you get that fuel down to, 20 gallons, 30 gallons, are you going to take that risk to get to that next spot? Well, anyway, so I go, we hauled butt, buddy. We went nonstop from Texas, hauling the booth and everything down to Florida. Well, we get there to this convention and we do this whole presentation. It went great. Drivers like, man, we understand it. We want to start optimizing our purchases and all this. It was good. So me and Chris, we didn't get any sleep for 2 days, man. We were tired, laughing. We were that tired where all you did was giggle. Okay. And so we're sitting there packing the stuff up. I just want to get home. I'm tired. I want to get home. We've been away for 4 days. Dude, and I've drank too much. Too many nights going out.
I was going to say, you probably had a few artificial stimulants.
Well, we did. After the trade shows, everybody goes out and drinks and all that stuff. Then you got to get up early. But anyway, so we do all this. On the way back, we're in Florida. And we had my truck at the time was like a 1500 Chevrolet. We had a trailer behind a U-Haul that we had it full of stuff on the back, had it all packed up. I mean, this thing was pretty heavy down with stuff. And I'm driving down the road and I'm going, and Chris looks down and says, hey, that next exit right there, there's a truck stop. Why don't we go ahead and pull over and get fuel? I looked at it. I looked back at him and said, man, nah, we'll wait till the next one. He said, I don't think we'll have enough gas. Well, me and my smart ass, my truck has this little thing that tells you how many gallons that you had and how many miles you have left, right? Well, Chris didn't know I'm looking at this. Then. Yeah. So I'm like, yeah, I'm going to get Chris. Chris, I bet you I don't need to stop there. When's the next one? He said, dude, it's 40 miles down the road. I said, well, buddy, I think we can make it, dude. We're not going to make it. And I'm looking at it.
It sounds like Kramer Cosmo in a Seinfeld episode.
Could be. But, man, when I looked at that thing, I knew I had enough. Well, I failed to see something. I'm hauling a lot of fuel, right? I mean, a lot of weight in the back of the truck and the trailer. So the rear of my trailer and my truck is pulled down. So even though that sucker said I had, 30 miles left to get, I didn't. I had about a half a mile. So we passed the exit up. We're going down this road, and about a mile down the road or so, half a mile past it, it goes p-p-p-p, because when I went to pass that exit, I said, Chris, no, we're going to go ahead and pull over. You're right. We need to pull it. He says, you don't have no balls. I said, what do you mean I have no balls? And I looked. I'm like, I can make it. It'd be close, but I can make it. Well, not only did I not have the balls, but I didn't make it. Then I had to turn around and call a tow truck, not to come tow me, but to bring me 5 gallons of gas. Do you know how much money they charge to bring you 5 gallons of gas? Okay, so I got home. Me and him swore we would never tell a soul that my optimization method didn't work and we ran out of gas. Well, I got busted. My sister, I turned in all my receipts, and of course, I turned in the damn towing receipt. And she wants to know, why is it that it cost you almost $12 per gallon for 5 gallons of gas? So anyway, the optimization failed. I didn't do it.
Didn't work that time.
But
it might have had something to do with cost plus.
It could have been. Or the retail miners are the best of.
Okay, so we covered pickles. We covered man boobs. We covered National Geographic boobs. And now, what were we just talking about? But anyway, so just to show a little love to the oversized, overweight world, which I guess I am, getting back to the man boobs. But you remember, Tony, we talked a few podcasts ago about an Ohio bridge hit. It's about a year or two now, where the driver lost his load, running without a pilot, running without a permit, middle of the night. His load comes off and tragically kills a woman. And he was charged with manslaughter. We're still waiting to find out if he ends up getting convicted. A truck driver charged with manslaughter, murder, because he didn't check his permit and didn't get a permit. So in Alaska, a week or two ago, a driver with an oversized load, actually it shouldn't have been oversized, but that's a whole other story. And the story here is he was operating on an annual permit. And you, of course, know what an annual permit, most of our listeners do. But in the oversized world, up to certain dimensions and certain weight, you can save some money if you're going to make multiple moves and buy an annual oversized overweight permit. And as long as you're running within those dimensions and within those weights and spacings, and as long as you're running on the roads that annual permit permits you to run on, you're good to go.
Hey, Steven,
he's on an annual permit.
Hey, Stephen, I got a question about annual permits. So on an annual permit, you basically go in and say, do you have to tell them I'm going to do this 100 times? Or do they charge you for each trip? Or is it just one fee and you can haul that size load one time or 1,000,000 times? They don't care.
Yeah, I'm hearing there's occasional exceptions popping up now, but 99.9% of the time you buy an annual oversized overweight permit in a specific state, you can run one time, you can run 1,000,000 times.
What if something changes? What if they add asphalt to the road and it's 2 inches higher now and something changes, during that year? I mean, that's not good, is
it? Well, that's why some states are at least starting to think about either strongly urging, as is the case in Illinois, or a few states are even starting to consider requiring an annual permittee would still have to go on the state's permitting website every day that they plan on making a move and checking their route just like they would check it if they were going to buy a single trip permit. In Illinois at one time, but they backed off. I'm sure they got some pushback from their elected officials and the trucking industry. And I can see both sides of this story, but they were going to require that when you went on each day with an annual permit, like you said, they get a trip authorization number. And if that truck driver gets stopped that day on his annual permit, if he don't have that trip authorization number, they're going to treat him as if he has no permit, even though he's got his annual permit, but they backed off. But excuse me, you're exactly right. The whole idea behind an annual permit is the truck driver, the company, needs to check their route every day, because you mentioned asphalt overpayment. That happens over time, but from one day to the next, a construction zone pops up, and all of a sudden you only got 10 feet to go through that construction zone. And that actually is one of the biggest complaints about annual permits with the state DOTs. Is this happen in Illinois frequently? They get hung up in construction zones all the time. And it's a big deal, Tony, as you might imagine. It's costly to that contractor to have to move Jersey barriers. It's costly to state police to come out and back that driver up to the next interchange ramp, and you're slowing up all the other people.
Hey, Stephen,
as well.
you finally have solved a mystery I've had my whole life down south, going across Interstate 10. And it's like we're driving, and all of a sudden you hit a construction zone, and you're waiting for 2 hours to get through it. You finally get through it, and you're talking to these people at a restaurant, and they go, all it was one truck. Why? Because he was too big. And I'm thinking, you think they're smart enough to get around this, but it was construction. And I guess if that guy was on an annual permit, I bet he just didn't look. He didn't go check it. He just said, I do this all the time, every couple of months, and nothing's different. It should be the same. But man, in defense of the trucking industry, there also are times and were times where the restrictions that popped up failed. The right hand didn't tell the left hand within the DOT. In other words, the district office didn't tell the permit office, or the permit office didn't get the information the way they were supposed to. And then Mr. Truck Driver did go on the system that morning. There was no restriction on the permitting map, and then he got hung up. So it works both ways. But sadly, the story in Alaska was this guy was operating on an annual permit. He ended up going under a bridge that he shouldn't have been going under, because it just wasn't part of the annual permit route. A lot of annual permits in states have specific roads that you just literally cannot be on, and he was on that road, unfortunately. And just like in Ohio, struck an overpass. His a passenger vehicle coming up from behind slams into it, and the person was tragically killed. So all of those are allegations. We're not going to mention the company name or anything like that, but it really opens up that can of worms about annual permits. And I've talked to you before, Tony, about how it's tragedies that cause, for better or for worse, state governments to react. And this is the type of thing, trucking industry, that if these kinds of things happen with any kind of frequency, we're possibly going to see someday states crack down on these annual permits and either take them away, which I don't think they'll do that, or start requiring trucking companies to do what they should be doing. And most do. Most do, Tony. They do their due diligence and check the state map. Well, Stephen, let me ask you this. So, if I go back to when we really got heavy in oversized overweight back around 2000 to 2003 time frame, at that time, most of your oversized overweight permits you had to apply for had to be looked at, touched by a human being. They weren't automated. There was no system to say, yep, you can just take that route. Here's where you go, like we're doing today. Because a lot of the states we do, we're getting 80, 90% self-issue, which means nobody touches it. So the reason annual permits came because it was taking too long to permit this size, dimensional, weight, this load. And so they said, we're going to do that annual permit so that you don't have to wait, because, hey, There's a lot more loads can be moved, a
going.
lot more things can be pushed. So annual permits were needed back then more than they were now.
I see where you're going.
Today, I could see jurisdictions going, well, wait a minute. If you can get that with 3 clicks of a button in less than 5 minutes, I'm going to make you go look. So what I'm going to tell the industry to stop and think, the DOTs are going to open their eyes and they're going to call us and go, hey, we're going to take from this many permits to this permits because we're making it that so damn easy that honestly the safety's more important, and we're going to make everybody go through a permit by permit every day. And why? Because if systems can do it better than what the drivers are doing it on the road and keep them from hitting something because it knows that 501. Because when we do route, Stephen, those permitted loads for those states that we do, part of that is the 511. Part of that is every day we've got a team of folks that they take these construction information and they implement it into these systems for the DOTs, for all these states we do, for all those 50-some% of permits we issue for the whole country. We're having to touch those 511s because, so if you think about it, the way we're doing this, and most of them are hands-free, would make more sense to do away with the annual permits and go make everybody get a permit, because then we would be sure that all those loads were hitting that system, validating. Because even in Texas today, if you go in to our restriction manager, Texas has, and they mark a road segment, they said, we have to repair, we have to do here, something happened, and they mark it. As soon as they do that in our restriction manager, it hits the permitting routing system. The permitting routing system goes, hey, there's 4 loads out there that haven't been really that far gone yet, and they're on this route. We need to reissue a permit. So we're doing that. I don't see why annual permits. Now, granted, if an annual permit because you're only going to be, 2,000 pounds more, some of those do make a lot of sense because that weight difference is going to make a difference. But because the regulation said at 80,000 pounds, it's fair for that state to get that other 2,000. And why make the process be so difficult and hard to get that load from point A to point B when in reality it's the same thing over and over and over and over again. So again, go back to annual. It kind of makes sense. So I don't know, Stephen. It's for safety. I see more of it needed because the more I see of these hits, they're annual permits, and that's scary. Because something needs to change there.
So I see exactly where you're going with that, and I won't repeat it, but I will reemphasize your logic is spot on. The automation permit logistically should make the annual permit irrelevant. However, there's local politics involved, and that's why I thought Illinois was on track to kind of split the baby in the cake down the middle, by the way. And that is the reason I said local politics, Tony. One of the ideas behind annual permits, besides what you said, it took so darn long to get a single trip permit, is states like to reward their own. And most in-state trucking companies are going to run more frequently, right? Within a certain dimension, certain type of truck. And so the state legislatures, it's an easy bill for them to pass saying, hey, we're going to sell this annual permit, and if you run so many times, you're going to save this much money. Well, the out-of-state trucking companies aren't going to run enough to make it worth their while. So it's a nice way for in-state politicians to reward their in-state trucking companies. But to your point, and kind of combining both your logic and my logic, where Illinois was going, and I think some states are going to go with incidents like this occurring, is we'll sell you your annual permit if you want. And if you run so many times, you decide it's going to save you money to get an annual permit rather than the more expensive single trip. But as a condition of that annual permit, you must still get a single permit in a sense. And that is, you must log into that ProMiles automated permitting system, run your route, get an okay from the state automated system, get a special trip authorization number. And like I said before, if you're stopped by Mr. State Trooper and you show him that annual permit, you're in trouble. You're operating without a permit because you don't have your trip authorization that you got that morning. So that's kind of, I think, the compromise that may
Stephen,
end up coming out of this.
I think you're dead on. I think that is the answer because it combines both things.
Take advantage of the automation.
Exactly. Take advantage and give value back to those folks that are going to do it a lot. Those guys are. Give them those angels. Maybe give them a different rate on their permit because you do so many of them. We have to, as a permit service, you have to give discounts to fleets when they do a bunch. Maybe states should give discounts to the carriers when they do a bunch. And maybe this is a way to do it. And I know red tape is a big thing. And I know a lot of states are looking at other ways to get revenue. And one of the ways is issue another type of permit. Maybe when they haul gravel, maybe when they haul, electricity, when they haul whatever. There's things that I believe that you can't keep things the same. Just like fuel tax. Eventually, there will be mile taxes everywhere. Just like heck, now Texas is talking about, they're doing a pilot now. So not only that 20 cents a gallon in Texas, where I was referencing almost $1 in California, well, Texas is going to now charge you per mile. California don't charge you per mile right now. So is that going to mean Texas is going to be more expensive than California next? Dude, there's no telling. You better keep watching, keep listening, and we'll keep bringing you all this kind of information what's happening because it's a mess.
There's a lot of mileage tax deniers out there, and you and I have talked to a few in recent weeks, but I think you and I are more realistic, whether we like it or not, and a lot of us don't like it. It's a coming. It's coming.
And that's really going to stink because now you're not just doing it based on your MPG and you have no control. You can't change the distance. Okay. You can make your MPG better. You can get better, price per gallon, by deals and everything. But no. When you travel, if they're going to charge you X number of cents for every mile you run, you report those miles and they're going to say, hey, here's my fuel tax I'm getting. And here's a mile tax, just like Kentucky's done for years. Oregon has done, not Oregon, because Oregon does only the mile tax. They don't actually charge at the pump. But you got New York, you got New Mexico, and then you got Idaho for the oversize. Anything over 80,000, you got a mile tax in Idaho. And Connecticut now.
Speaking of that, Tony, I got a question for Rick and Carmen next time we talk to them, but I'll pose it to you too, because you probably know the answer. I've been talking a lot about this mileage tax on my LinkedIn social media and just in the groups and meetings and even demos that I do. Here's the question that's coming up now. I think it's an easy one for you guys to answer, but I don't know the answer. Well, and I know it's a little bit crystal ball, but when the mileage tax finally comes in full force someday in individual states or nationwide, will a trucking company for a time period end up having to pay both fuel tax and mileage tax?
They do it today. Connecticut, the first of this year, implemented a mile tax. They never had one before. So now you have your fuel tax you have to deal with, and now you're doing a mile tax. Texas, if they pass this, that means Texas, 20 cents a gallon and per mile. You're not getting the dish. Now, some of these things are talking about, but we'll rebate you back your fuel tax. We'll give you incentive to go the mile tax mile version versus going the fuel. There's a catch-22. It's just like right now. If you have an electric vehicle, you are not taxed at all for that electric. You're not charged a per mile rate. They're not paying a fuel tax. They're not compensating to the fund, right? Today. But tomorrow, those guys will be paying a mile tax. That's the reason that they're trying to do a mile tax.
So this is a very heated issue, and will get even worse. I'm not pro or con. ProMiles, we're gonna do our business either way, right? Because the governments depend on us for software, and so do a lot of carriers. But what's rubbing salt in truckers' minds about this whole issue is what I just asked you about, and they feel like it's one thing to, throw another tax at them, but they feel like without even understanding that rebate thing you talked about, by God, if I got to pay my diesel fuel tax and my mileage tax, that's it. They see red at that point.
And they should. And that's they will.
Too much for them.
They will. Yeah. The reason is because they're not going to be able to survive. Imagine the fleets today barely getting by. Now, if I'm going to charge you more than what you're currently paying, because I need it, I'm the government, I got to have the money. Why? We got to repair these roads. I guarantee you there's thousands of bridges in this country that you should not drive across, and people do it every day. Yeah. But we have to pay for it, right? Well, right now, the IFTA money and the fuel tax that is collected is not contributing to that fund. What are they doing? They're almost I think it's $3 billion in debt or something, or 300 billion. It's a huge number that in debt that it already owes back to the big fund. Why? Because we're not getting enough just
part
for fuel.
of that. Well, that's true. The emissions are getting better and all, but a lot of the trucking industry I talk about will also, rightly so, in some degrees, point at some states that rob from what's supposed to be the fuel fund, the transportation fund, and they use those fuel taxes within their state government to pay for other things.
What I understand, Stephen, is the other way around. It's they don't have enough of the fuel tax, but they have to keep repairing these roads to do things they're doing. How are they doing it? They're going to the national fund, and they're actually pulling it from the general fund. They're saying that we don't have enough. So they knew this 20 years ago, Stephen. 20 years ago, we said, we're running out of money. We can't keep doing this. We got to fix it. You know what they did 20 years ago? Looked around and said, what do we do? What did they do about 10 years ago? They started building these organizations, giving them millions of dollars to go figure out how do we get more money to fix these roads. And right now...
No, I'm agreeing with you. I'm agreeing with you, Tony, that in totality, the funding available through fuel tax is dwindling. And that is the primary reason we're going to the mileage tax someday. But I got to correct you. There are and have been instances of some state governments that have, in some people's mind, stolen from what's traditionally the road fund to pay for other services. It does happen.
Well,
and unfortunately,
that's why I don't like being in the middle of those things, Stephen, because you don't know what's happening. We don't know what's happening. And, we
just do what we're told.
Well, that's what's hard.
Whatever the governments tell us to do.
I'm a trucker. I'm trying to drive a truck. I'm trying to pay my bills. I'm trying to get home to see mama. I want to be back before my daughter's birthday. I got all this on me already. The last thing I need to worry about is who's stealing money out of what fund to do whatever other fund. But what I do know, it is going to hurt to add a mile tax everywhere. Not only because now there's an additional tax, it's the administration of that tax. Remember, before IFTA, you had to go get a decal for all the different states. You had to pay the state, wait, a year to get your money back from this state. It was a mess. This mile tax, what are they doing? Now, all of a sudden, they're going to add another tax, another form, another way to pay it. So no more just one IFTA filing to do. Now you do one IFTA filing, 4 mile taxes. Connecticut, the 5th mile tax. Texas will be the 6th mile tax. Virginia be the 7th. This will be the 8th. This will be the 9th. This will be the 10th. It's just going to keep growing. And if we don't stop it now and build it using the same methodology that IFTA did for fuel, it ain't going to work. We're just moving money around. Yeah. We're taking the money that we're saying, sure, we're getting this mile tax, but now we're having to throw it right back out to do what? To do the audits for mile tax, to make sure you're paying your mile tax. You're not screwing the government. The guys at odometers go back. We're going to have to go out and audit you now. It's just adding so much more administration that took this country, decades to figure out how to quit doing it before. And what are we doing? We're starting it all over again. We're going right to the before IFTA days and saying, well, let's just do a mile tax for every jurisdiction. Now you're going to have a decal or something for that. So this penny decal is now going to cost you $20 a truck. So we got to watch. We've got to learn from our history, and we've got to say, look, we need money. We need to fix roads. You don't want that brand new truck getting all dented up or have a pothole out there. Like on I-70, there was a pothole that got a major accident, caused all this death and everything else happening because there was a pothole. Why? Because we didn't fix it fast enough. So damned if you do, damned if you don't.
Yeah. Well, I got to tell you, Tony, before our producer, Megan, has to edit yet another podcast, she's probably up to 4 podcasts by now with this one. This podcast is going to have to come to a close for the same reason some of our others do. I've crossed my legs 3 different ways here, and it's just time to go, if you know what I mean. So I'm going to wish you, my cool cat boss, I'm going to wish you a happy Good Friday, a happy Easter, a happy Passover, a happy Man Boob Day, a happy National Geographic Boob Day, and a happy Eat a Baby Out of a Cake Day. I'm going to wish you all those days. I don't know what all those Stroncheck family traditions you all do there, but I'm wishing you a happy days, my friend.
Oh, buddy,
moving
I
forward.
appreciate it. Same back at you. And if anything, just don't try to prove to your buddy you're better than him and that you can get to that location and get that fuel and not know what you're doing. You'll look like an ass like I did. Don't do that.
And don't ever again steal your podcast partner's punchline.
I didn't know that was
one
the
and only joke
punchline.
of the year.
I was trying to.
You're too damn smart for your own good.
No, I was going to be a smart ass again. Like my wife says, I'm a good smart ass.
All right. Love you, buddy. Take care,
too.
everybody.
Have a good weekend.
Bye, all.
Bye-bye.